Hello, well here's another instalment in my series on how to write a book. And as you can see on the screen, today's topic is your style. So let's get stuck straight in and look at what this is all about. Well, just to be clear, when we say style, I'm not trying to be too sophisticated about this, we're talking about the way you write. And in this context, of course, the way you write your book. And if you don't think about that, then you'll probably end up with the wrong style. So let's take a look at what this is all about. What do you need to think about? Well, the first thing I'd say you need to think about is what's your attitude towards your reader? What do you think about them? What do you think your relationship with them is? And what are you trying to help them with or communicate to them, or whatever it is your purpose is in writing this book? And that really should influence the way you go about writing to them. And useful things to ask yourself are, well, what style would engage your reader? What would grab their interest? And what would also put you in tune with them? Your choice of language is absolutely vital here. You can be detached from them, sound too different, not sound convincing. There's all sorts of things you get wrong, but if you think about how you can be in tune with them, just as you would be if you're talking to somebody face to face, then what a difference that can make. So that attitude is all part of your style. Then we get into something that's probably a bit more technical in one sense, and that's your sentence structures. They do need attention. People who write a lot often write the same sort of thing all the time, and when they come to writing a book, they don't stop and think, well, actually I'm writing for a different audience, I need to do this differently. So it doesn't matter how competent you are as a writer. In fact, sometimes there's a danger of being too competent. You need to stop and think, what's my style right here for this reader? And there are some well-known enemies in this area, and I'd say there are three in particular. One is complexity. Often when people are writing in a hurry, in particular, and trying to get the stuff down there in the flow, they can end up writing sentences that are really far too complex. So it really pays to simplify things down. And there's all sorts of simple techniques, like if you've got a long sentence or long paragraph, breaking it up somehow. But sometimes if you start doing that too systematically, so to speak, you can end up with something that's monotonous. And even if you don't have complex sentences, an endless sequence of very short, simple sentences can itself become monotonous. Sentence length that stays all the same is monotonous. And just as if you were talking to somebody and you would vary the way you talk, you need to vary the way you structure your sentences as well, I'd suggest. Another thing which is very much a technicality, but well worth thinking about, is clumsy punctuation. And that can often happen when writing in a hurry. And sorting out the punctuation is really something to do when you're reviewing. And if you leave something for a while and you go back and read it and then you trip over it, often it's actually a symptom of the punctuation not being quite right, or the sentence being too complex is another reason. So sentence structure is something that definitely needs attention, and once you realize it needs attention, the battle's half won. What next? Well, mind your language, as they say. When you write a book, hopefully you're going to have lots of people reading it. That's what you're aiming for. If one person reads it, well, you're not going to have any problems with the readers, but it's not very good. So you hope to have lots of people reading it, and then that really makes it something that's public. And as I'm sure you know, if you're dealing with lots and lots of people, you're almost bound to upset somebody or other. Everybody's got something they have a bee in their bonnet about. And sometimes, the offence is unintended and needless, but but there's no point in needlessly annoying people. And there's all sorts of ways in which you can needlessly annoy people. And a lot of that's down to being aware of cultural differences, for instance. Now, I'm not starting to get myself drawn into the whole politically correctness debate. I'm just talking about common sense and thinking about your reader or readers and how different they might all be, and being very careful that you don't annoy them. There's all sorts of easy ways to annoy some of your readers. So just be careful. Now, the other thing here about language is vocabulary. If you do a test on readability, sometimes if you're writing a specialist topic or even writing fiction in a specialist area, you can get your score reduced because of vocabulary. But the thing is that vocabulary isn't necessarily a problem. Even complex or unusual vocabulary isn't necessarily a problem, provided you help the reader learn it as you go along. So I was given some great advice when I wrote my first book, which did very well in the end. And that was when you introduce a new term, define it there and then the reader will come along with you. So being very mindful of that really makes a difference. The other thing, of course, which you can also do with a book, if it's got lots of technical vocabulary and people might meet it a number of times, is have a glossary of terms at the end, sometimes called a jargon buster. But you need to think carefully whether that's appropriate for the kind of book you're writing. But if you think it might be, well, it won't do any harm, will it? Well, I've only touched a few points of writing and style, the style of your writing. But what can help, and I found this useful, and I've seen lots of writers find it useful, you can write your own style guide. You write down what convention you're going to use for this particular piece that you're writing. And you might then start to reuse that document when you write other things, and you will gradually start to see patterns in what is fundamentally your style. So it really does help, and it clarifies your thoughts. So it may sound something that's a bit like an extra chore, but it can actually end up being something quite enjoyable. Clarifying your thoughts on your style aids consistency in the way you write, and that almost invariably makes it work better for the reader. So there we are. That's some points on style. I've tried to look at things that are perhaps not so commonly stated to be more useful. But if you want more help on any of this, then there's our URL as ever. And that more or less draws us to the end of what we're doing today. And as you can see on the screen, in a minute, it says, click the bell and so on. If you click the bell, then you'll get notified of further pieces. If you subscribe, then that's another way of making sure you know what's going on, to be notified. Subscription is free. There's no fee involved. It just means you're then connected in on the channel. If you like what you've seen, please like it and maybe tell others about it. That would be wonderful. And then over time, maybe you'll have a series of tips which hopefully will be of value to you. And one last thing, if you found this useful and there's other things you'd like me to cover in future pieces, then please post them as comments on this particular video, and I will do my very best to take them on board and produce future material which addresses your questions or issues. I certainly think that's very much deserved if somebody goes to the trouble of doing so. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll be back another time before too long. Bye for now.